unless you see that child as your own, there's something wrong with. No child should be suffering. And if you think that child deserves to suffer because of different faith and you've got hate in your heart, you're definitely not a human being. So, every child deserves a fair and equal chance in life, and that child could be yours. So I challenge anyone who hates refugees to come to a refugee camp with me and see where your propaganda and misconceptions are.
Welcome to the Global Indian Podcast, the official platform for people of Indian origin, because let's face it, we are everywhere. Welcome back to your weekly show where we plunge into the human experience of being a person of Indian origin, take a second look at the countries we now call home, and tackle, well, the big conversations we need to have. This week I'm joined by the incredible Ravi Singh. He is the founder and director of Khalsa Aid. These guys have been everywhere in the globe wherever help is needed. They were there to support the Yezidi community when they were being brutally attacked by ISIS. They were there all the way in Bangladesh to help with those who were affected by the floods. In actual fact, when I was in the Caribbean, I came across their support staff who are actually supporting those who are impacted by the Cat 5 hurricanes. I don't know any country that they haven't been. And even more so, people whose lives they haven't touched. These guys have done incredible work, and in this podcast, we get to plunge into what's it like to be Ravi. Not only looking at why he set up to do what he does, the impact that is made, but also where he sees the world heading, tackling about subjects such as fascism, looking at about identity politics, and where he sees modern day India heading towards. It is an incredible conversation that he provides his personal insights into the issues that he feels matters most. Also, I'm very happy to announce that after recording of this podcast, Ravi's actually been nominated for the prestigious Nobel Peace Prize. And I know many of our audience out there across the globe know incredibly well how these prizes work. So if they can also lend a support towards fanning the flames of positive discussion about the work that Ravi's done, please do so, because I can't think of anybody more deserving than these guys. Not that they've actually asked for anything, but I think it's a good thing as social custodianship. I'd like to thank our dear supporters and sponsors, including those voices that you're going to hear from shortly, and why they believe and why they've supported this incredible mission of ours with the Global Indian series. If you'd like to find out more about the work that we do and enjoy the entire repertoire of conversations so far, it couldn't be easier. Simply go to our website, which is www.globalindianseries.com, where you can find out more about the stories that are impacting people just like us around the globe. I really hope you enjoy this remarkable session. Take care for now.
Hello, my name is Daniel Traça, and I'm Dean of Nova School of Business and Economics in Carcavelos, Portugal, one of Europe's leading business schools. I'm proud to be of Indian origin, and I invite you to discover these podcasts, which will look to redefine the impact that Indians and their descendants are doing all over the world. In behalf of Nova School of Business and Economics, I wish you a great 2021.
My name is Chitra Stern, and I am a proud Global Indian Ambassador and CEO of Martinal Resorts and Martinal Residences. We pride ourselves on the journeys that define a community, and our developments bring people together. Did you know that over 70,000 people just like us call Portugal home? The Global Indian journey has brought people together in a meaningful way, and on behalf of all of us at Martinal, we want to thank you for joining us in these remarkable conversations. We look forward to seeing you here in Lisbon post-COVID. Have a great day.
And just move. Get up 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 and just.
Like being me, I mean, you're always thinking ahead. You always think how you can make that big difference. A lot of people who support you around the world, they know me for the last 21 years. And they know that, there's that trust between us and the donors. We're not the best organized, but we're not the worst. And we're always trying to improve. So being me is basically always on the go, thinking ahead, but mostly fighting and I think campaigning for better society, like like the intolerance that we have nowadays on the right-wing media, right-wing thought process, where a lot of the individuals will basically try to turn you against a particular faith or people. So most of my personal life, my social media is spent trying to educate people that we're all human beings. We can't hate each other. We must learn from past mistakes. So yeah, so it's a crazy world. You don't want to be in my shoes. Once I've gone left this world, I hope it's a better world. But it is rather taxing, because when you're in the forefront of an organization like Khalsa Aid, everything is good when it goes well. If it doesn't go well, then you'll become the target as well. So a lot of people think like Ravi Singh is some sort of Superman or holy man or whatever. I'm not. I'm just a normal, humorous guy, loves his coffee and a good joke. Because when you're facing tough situation, you need a lot of humor. You need a laugh. You need to be able to laugh and deal with situations which are tough. One day you might be at home here in the UK shopping, having a coffee. Next day you're on the borders of Iraq and Syria, talking to a young girl, a Yezidi girl who's just returned from ISIS after several years of sexual slavery, and the trauma, and they tell you very in raw details what they've gone through. You've got to process that. So you've got to be able to understand how to deal with these difficult situations. People don't see that. People see us bringing aid A and then delivering to B. But in between, there is A1, A2, A3, where you're dealing with people's emotions, people who lost their loved ones, because to them, you're the first shoulder they had, an independent shoulder they had to cry on, and they can really let it out. So it does affect you in a way, but you got to be strong to deal with it. So I don't think you really want to be in my shoes at times. But
No, absolutely. What do you think are the biggest misconceptions people have then about you as an individual? Because as you rightly said, you go out there because it's this human form, and you recognize that there is a fragility in terms of being a human. But then there is this also equally so a rise in a right-wing element of antitrust, of anti-human behavior. But what's the misconceptions that you often come across?
many misconceptions. Remember the war in Syria, the refugees being labeled as something subhuman. They've been dehumanized, that they're rapists, they're murderers, they're unacademic, unintelligent. It's actually the reverse. When you go to the refugee camps, Syrian people are highly educated, doctors, teachers, all sorts of professionally qualified people in the camps. Syria was flourishing, although under a dictatorship, which is very brutal, but the people themselves and education were way ahead of many other people in the world. So our perception, what we've been painted by the right-wing media is that these people are murderers, they're going to come and kill you. But if you ever have chance to travel to the Middle East, where we work in northern Iraq with Kurdish community, we work in other parts of the world like Lebanon, wherever we meet people in the Middle East, it's always like the Punjabis come and eat with us, have a cup of tea, don't leave us. In the refugee camps we work in northern Iraq, you can't leave the people without a cup of tea in the refugee camps. They insist that we sit with them, eat with them. So a lot of misconceptions, a lot of propaganda. The only way to fight it is to remember, if you see a starving child in a refugee camp, unless you see that child as your own, there's something wrong with it. No child should be suffering. And if you think that child deserves to suffer because of different faith and you've got hate in your heart, you're definitely not a human being. So, every child deserves a fair and equal chance in life, and that child could be yours. So I challenge anyone who hates refugees to come to a refugee camp with me and see where your propaganda and misconceptions are.
Where do you think the rise of intolerance has come from, and has it got worse in your opinion? Because you've been doing this since the 1990s.
Got worse because we've got a lot of right-wing governments all over the world, Brazil, India, America, even the UK, we got the same ugly head being raised, and Hungary. So there has been a rhetoric, right-wing rhetoric, rise in political ideology, and there are good people out there fighting the ideology, trying to spread more humanity. But for me personally, with Trump gone now, that could be a very positive thing for the world, a change, because we can't have someone encouraging right-wing politics, especially if they're leaders of the free world. So,
But where do you think this rises from? Because the reality is, when we have a look at it, we place a great reliance on the integrity of politicians to go out and do what's right for the people. But then all of a sudden, as you rightly said, you get people that come in based on public perception, on this X factor competition of likability, and everything that they promise they don't deliver on.
but we thought we learned from, like, the Nazi Germany, we learned from Stalin, we learned from other extreme figures in history and ideology, but we haven't. And like they said, the history continues to repeat itself unless we learn from it. We're not learning from it. We come to a stage in the world where our own leaders will mock different religions and faiths, and they'll be voted in, or they'll be wanted for human rights abuses, they'll be voted in. I mean, it's sad to see that so many people could vote in people who are fascist and extreme right wing, because they think being nationalist means patriotic, and which isn't actually right. Patriotic means that you build a better society, a better nation that you love, which is tolerant, accepting, and embracing all. I think somewhere along the line, we've lost the plot, and it's just madness. We can't even debate politics nowadays without falling out with family and friends. It's become so poisonous, the atmosphere. So if you ask me where it comes from, even I'm confused. I've got people around me who will vote for right-wing figures, and I ask them, to them everything's correct, everything's right. I've never known so many highly academic, educated people so brainwashed. I'm confused as everyone else. How does someone harbor so much hatred or ideology which is intolerant? I can't do it. Even if I fell out with people, I always look back saying, how can I make that better? But I wouldn't keep it to make it worse.
What was that moment that changed you? Because you think the way that you do, because the experiences that you've had, and your experiences have been much more than the UK, or it's been globally. You met with people in the most dire situations, and that ultimately shifts the way that you see the world. But is there a particular moment in time, in a particular case that you worked on, that really hit hard home on you, on this rise of intolerance and the need for change?
I think there's loads of moments in our lives. I grew up in a small village in Punjab, and I was 11 and a half when I came to this country. And our village had people from all walks of life, Sikhs, Muslims, Hindus. We all lived together happily. It's only when I came to the UK I saw the hatred and intolerance towards each other, and I was like, couldn't understand it. So for me, there's been many turning points, like the murder of my friend back in the village by the police in fake encounter and tortured in 5 different police stations. I grew up with him. I call him my brother, and he was killed at the age of 19 in a fake encounter, which affected a lot of young Sikh men in Punjab after 1984. But that his murder, cold-blooded murder, didn't mean I became hateful towards either the people or India or whatever. I just became more determined to be more human being, but yet at the same time call out what's wrong, especially taking on governments and regimes who are committing human rights abuses. So they always say that the people who are bullied become the bullies, but if you suffer the hate, it doesn't mean you become the hater. You should then take it on and become a better human being to stop that hate. So you can't carry a chip on your shoulder and trying to change the world, because unless you can change yourself, the hate will consume you and you'll only spread hate. So for me, that turning point was my murder of my brother in the village. That there are so many atrocities around the world. If we can understand how to tackle them. And the best way is love. Love and humanity is a great concept over hate. That's the only way you're going to defeat hate. I used to think this whole airy-fairy, like talking, out my backside or whatever people say, like it doesn't work like that. The world is, but I've seen it 21 years. Love is love over hate. And if you keep spreading love and humanity, you'll eventually start changing those around you. And when you change those around you, you start changing the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, coming back to those times in Punjab, I suppose it's best that we deal with the elephant in the room. I was following your social media, and Ravi, it must be so surreal being you, in a good way as well, because on one side you're known for your humanitarian work, for uplifting those who need to be lifted up, and more so being a social custodian for positive change. But the moment you talk about the place that you were born, Punjab, you're almost vilified. And you're thrown into this ambush of saying, well, you're anti-India or you're right wing. I suppose the easiest part is, rather than putting words in your mouth, how does it feel for you? What does identity mean to you as a whole?
Whenever I remember going to Iraq in 2014, and then I said, I tweeted, I'm in Iraq, and we're going to be helping the victims of ISIS, the Yezidi community. And that was I was basically starting on my social media. And within that one night, I had 1,000 or 2,000 extra followers on my Twitter at the time. And from India, mainly, they're saying, brilliant, we love it, we're proud to be Indian, good to see an Indian guy there, Indian, so they're very proud, like Indian. So when next day I tweeted that, you're proud of me now, but when I talk about the 84 Sikh genocide or 1984, state, Punjab, how I suffered under fake encounters, you call me separatist and terrorist. So it's okay for me to talk about the human rights of other parts of the world, but I can't talk about human rights or my identity. So being a Punjabi myself, people in the right-wing Indians want me to call myself Indian. And I said, I will call myself Indian if you bring justice to the Sikhs. But in the meantime, I will remain Punjabi because that's what we are. Punjabis, Punjab was free at one time. Punjabi is a different culture. We have a nationality. We're a nation and a culture completely apart from other parts of India. But it doesn't mean that we hate anyone else. We hate people, say, from other parts of India. No, we don't. That's where I grew up. That land is a shared land, maybe different cultures. So it doesn't mean suddenly we are going to start hating. No, just because I'm Punjabi and I love Punjab, that seems to be a threat to a lot of right-wing Indian groups. And they will always post against me, calling me terrorist, separatist, ISI, Pakistani agent, jihadist. It's amazing. Like they couldn't even spell these words, but that's what they call me. And I just sort of like, I just humor them. I just sort of like humor and say, look, I never swear or shout. I like to wind people up. And I usually end up winding up a lot of people. So, I love gifts. The gifts are the best invention ever.
But coming back to that, because it's great that you've risen above it. But the fact that you have to rise above it, isn't that more dangerous than anything else? Because
that like people, right? Others who are suffering, saying you can all rise above it. Humor them. Don't take these trolls serious. The moment you take it serious and you get affected, they win.
Yeah,
I don't get affected by them. And some people say don't answer them, don't reply to them, but I do, because when I reply, people around who are watching learn as well. The
absolutely.
facts. So I reply with facts or black and white facts or humor to have a little laugh. I will never swear or shout, like I said. So I love that. Being a Punjabi, I love doing these pange. So for me, replying to these trolls is something I really enjoy doing.
But do they realize that your need is one of saying there has to be equality? The fact that you're fighting for humanitarian rights everywhere means it's everywhere. You don't discriminate with that. And because of your own personal tragedy that you went through, losing your brother through a fake encounter, you're saying, well, the same needs of me going to Iraq to help the Yezidis should also be seen here in Punjab as well. Why is it such a bone of contention, in your opinion, for
We-
the right wing media of India, so you say.
because a lot of the right wing groups, they just want Hindustan. They want all the other minorities to be swallowed up by one language, one ideology, and destroy all the other cultures and traditions and identities. I don't agree with that. You can't destroy. If you go back in history, look the Egyptians, the Incas, they all be swallowed up. They were mighty empires. They were mighty people. They had rich cultures. Unless we resist that, the way to resist it is to keep imposing your identity without being rabidly violent towards anyone who doesn't agree with you. So being Punjabi doesn't mean I hate Tamils or Kashmiris or people from Assam or people from Maharashtra. No, I respect everyone. I just need you respect my identity too. So they feel threatened. That's why they feel threatened. That's why people like me are target. They want me to toe the line. Like you're Indian, and that's it. And I think some of those right-wing groups have made statements like if you don't consider yourself Indian, then get out. If you're a Muslim, you don't consider yourself as a basically a Hindustani Indian culture and assimilation, then go to Pakistan. All this rhetoric you hear all the time. But people who impose their own or strengthen their identity, not impose, strengthen their identity, really honestly, I've met people from all over different parts of India, just because they're proud of where they came from, which tradition and culture, they don't hate anyone else. I don't hate anyone else.
What is the type of India that you want to see? Because you've seen the worst in the human experience. You've seen what happens in places like Iraq, where we get a rise of intolerance. You've seen the same thing that happens in Sudan. Malawi, we've seen huge dangers of this right the way across the globe. And as you rightly said, for change to occur, it also has to happen with the political figures. What is the India that you would like to see that you can say, actually, this is a nation in itself that should be proud of who they are, but they need to do that. What would that be for you?
Justice and fairness, and no corruption. Unfortunately, there is no justice. It's all who can afford justice, who's got the power. I mean, you got millions and millions of Dalits. They struggle. They're prejudiced against. They're picked on. They're treated like subhuman. Even including people from my own background too. So we need to understand that unless we respect every human life, if India wants to be successful, it has to deliver justice and protect all minorities in real time, and have leaders who are not politicians but statesmen or stateswomen, because politicians have failed India. Every politician who has held a senior position or became a prime minister, you can look back at their families. They made millions. That's not on their prime minister or whatever politician's salary. They became millionaires. Their sons became millionaires. So and economically the country, and they're ripping off the general public who are working hard. The Indian people from all states, every part, work really, really hard for a living. Across India, different states, they struggle to make ends meet, and corrupt leaders come and take it away. So India needs a change, not necessarily happen overnight, but it needs people who can be, like I said, statespeople, like statesmen or stateswomen, not politicians. Politicians divide and rule, think for themselves. Statespeople, statesperson would think for the people first. Every state level, there's corruption from the police, from judiciary. It's just, it breaks my heart for a local person. I hear somebody poor being raped, and then they get killed, and the killers are from a rich, well-to-do family. They escape, or a different caste, they escape justice. It's a regular occurrence. So I don't want justice just for us. I want justice for everyone. I want people to stop the corruption. That's the sort of India I want, where there's tolerance, respect for each other's faiths, and help each other grow, not bury each other, not bring each other down.
Absolutely, because you're your bone of contention isn't with India as a geography. It's not with the 1.3 billion people. It's saying those who have
No,
politicized an identity of Indianness, which happens to be a government. Well, if you are going to represent 1.3 billion people, you need to represent the needs, the wants, desires of every single echelon of society. And the fact that, Ravi, you've been out there to different countries around the world, you've seen the desperation that are in people's eyes that have gone through rape, that have gone through severe trauma. You don't want to see that happen within a country that was part of an existence for so many other people. That doesn't sound very right wing to me or separatist to me. So, where did the media get it wrong? Why are people kind of taken onto this media? Have they forgotten that the media is an industry? It sells sensationalism. Do you think that's probably what the issues are then?
media is controlled by corporations now, by ruling governments. So it's much of the media is biased. They are funded by groups that encourage right-wing thought. It could be corporations, it could be the government, it could be people associated with the government. So they openly encourage propaganda, lies, and biased news. Spreading misinformation is the key nowadays to fighting many like movements that we're facing now, like farmers and all that. So the best way to do it is to send the misinformation to the public and destroy any individual or movement through that media. So the media is well controlled by the state. And if you're not, you'll get threats. A lot of journalists have been killed in India. If you type in Google journalists being killed in India in the last few years, say even 4 or 5 years, you'll see a list of men and women who were just simply murdered because they went against the right-wing media or the thought process, and they mysteriously been killed by so-called gunmen they could never find, which is very strange.
And unfortunately, it's a growing threat across the globe, isn't it? As well, the fact that the nobility of
there was a lady journalist about 3-4 years ago, I think her name was Gauri, from middle India somewhere, and she was just shot on the doorstep. She was a champion of social rights and issues, and gunmen just walked up to her and shot her at her home. And it was like nobody knew who they were, and they were killed. She was killed. No justice. It's happening very, very often. It's happening too often, actually.
Because your fight, I suppose, is for equality, is for justice. That's everything that you've done. And I think this is important because this conversation provides a flame of positive publicity to say, this is what India is that you want it to see. This is what you want to see, the end of inequality taking place globally. Like even with the farmers discussion now, I don't know much about it in all honesty. I know from a bit of the research that I've done, but why do you think people are protesting? And for me, just from an anthropological point of view, standing on the outside, you got the world's largest protest. You got the protests from America that had a huge impact here in the UK, had a huge impact in other countries. And we saw the government of the UK obviously take a stance to that. But you got this world's largest protest taking place in India. And people are in the streets in London, in Birmingham, in Canada, across the US. Surely this protest should also matter. I'm just thinking purely from a logistics point of view. What does the protest mean to you, first and foremost? And do you feel that the response from the international media has been adequate to showcase the fight for people requesting a change? Because this is much more than a bill, I'm assuming. It's much more than politics. It's about a lack of trust in powers that be that's supposed to help people.
Yeah, first of all, thank God for social media. If there's no social media, we'll be in a dark age, and all the media reporting will be controlled by the state, and we'll get absolute lies being told. Like when the protesters, the farmers, started off their rightful, lawful means to protest towards Delhi, and straight away the right-wing media headlines: separatists, Khalistani terrorists, ISI, Pakistani terrorists, these farmers are not farmers. All this, information went out day and night. They put so much into it to discredit the farmers' movement, which was a disgrace. So this sort of reaction was expected, and they threw everything at it. These protests are, more than just the farmers' bills now. It's become a giant corporation versus that small farmer. Most of the farmers in India are small land-holding farmers, so they're struggling now. If you see people, elderly 70, 80-year-olds in freezing temperatures, 24/7 protesting, they're not doing it because they want to be funky and have selfies and put posts on Instagram. They're doing
virtue signaling, yeah.
This is their future. This is their livelihood. They either fight for it or they lose it all. So in a way, Punjab and Haryana are the last bastions against the giant corporations who are again in a collusion with the government because they're supporting these particular politicians. So these protests you see outside in the UK, US, Canada, you can see how much connection we have from back home in Punjab with the farms, with the people, with the villages. So now we can be the voice for those who the media are not showing. So international media has started to take note, like the BBC, Sky the other day, CNN, but they took it a bit late. Didn't take it serious. Two reasons, like one is that we don't really have a good PR team as Punjab. We need to learn how to project our issues and struggles better globally. And the second is because the Indian media wasn't really picking it up by the right sort of media. So the people outside weren't picking it up. And suddenly when some of the Indian media who are independent and not connected with the government, whatever, started reporting, so did the rest of the media. But the power of social media helped, hashtagging, reaching out to different organizations. I remember people from the BBC calling saying, "Can we have your interview? We've been told we're not covering this enough. We like to cover more." So it's, we need a better system where we can approach the media too, saying, "Look, this is what's going on. What does affect Ravi Singh near Heathrow Airport? What's happening in Punjab?" Because we are connected. We are the people of the land. We're the people of the soil. Land is considered like by the farmers as our mother. So it's like we're now fighting for a mother. First we fought for a mother tongue. Now we're fighting for a mother.
Do you feel so? Because you mentioned something there that's almost dropped something in my mindset. You're fighting. These guys aren't fighting for separatism. Is that correct? So all the rumors that have been out there, that it's separatism, that these guys are fighting. You're saying that they're literally fighting for their survival and what's identifiable to them, which is their notion of Indianness, is actually equality. But what they've seen is reverse of that. So it's actually a lack of trust that they have in the system to say that it's going to actually protect them, that there is no safety net at the end of it. So these guys are taking extreme measures of going towards Delhi. And we have to keep in mind, this is a very long walk in severe conditions to actually say our voices matter too. Why does it bother people here? And how do you think that's impacted people's thoughts of this notion of India or Indianness? Because now they're taking to the streets, say we're fighting for these farmers and they're Indian farmers. But do you feel that now all of a sudden they're going to start feeling less connected to a nation and just more connected now to a region? Do you think that could be the case now? Not because they want, but because of what they've seen in return for that.
I mean, the farmers come from all over India. Punjab is taking the lead like it normally does.
Yeah.
We always take the lead against injustices. So the farmers struggle at the UP, Rajasthan, Bihar. Farmers are fighting for it all over. So it's purely a farming issue. But the government is letting them down. I don't think there's ever a question that Punjabis felt anything about Punjabi. And the way, I think you're saying, why are we doing this? The way they were treated when they started marching with water cannons in freezing winter, 2-3 degree temperatures, and they were spraying cold frozen water on our elders who were peacefully going towards Delhi. Then they used tear gas. Then they put all these barriers. Never known a country to dig their own roads about 20, 30 foot deep and wide, about 20, 30 foot, to stop their own people going on a peaceful protest. It was absolute disgrace. It seems like I'm sitting in a war zone in the Middle East, the way they were treating the protesters. But I think that really got us all awakened more. If they had treated them more respect, saying, come on in, do your protest, whatever, and then we would have felt a little bit, okay, that's not bad, but the way they were treated like an invading army. And so that really motivated everyone to, we got disgusted by it, angry by it, very, very disappointed the way they were treated. And that really fired up a lot of people around the world. Even people who weren't fighting for these rights, farmers' rights, they suddenly woke up because they really hurt them deep, that why they're treating our Punjabi. So I don't think people will consider, most of the Punjabis always said they were Punjabi, but this morcha, this farmer is an inclusive all farmer protest from across India. It doesn't matter what you're Sikh, Muslim, Hindu farmer. If you're a Rajasthani, Gujarati, UP farmer, you're a farmer. This is a pure farming
Sure.
protest.
So this is probably a protest more along the lines of the income inequality that's taking place. It's us and them, us being the common individuals and them being those who are elite.
The corporations.
The corporations. And that is essentially what this big protest really symbolizes. So then is there a bone of contention, or do you feel frustrated, I suppose, thinking, well, why haven't the UK picked up on this enough? Because on one side, you've got a large community of people of Indian origin, Punjabi origin, alongside Gujaratis, alongside Marathis, everybody going to the streets in the UK saying what's currently taking place over there is not right and it needs to change. But the voice from the UK government, the government that we all serve in one respect or another, has been definitely quiet.
Yeah, the government kept quiet because they're trying to sign trade deals with India. It's a disgrace. Our foreign secretary, Dominic Raab, has gone to India and he's not raised this issue. But yet, Justin Trudeau in Canada has openly said the farmers have the right to protest peacefully. But our government, who comes out with so much stuff like, we're the human rights champion. They are, I think, currently the chair for human rights at the UN, I think the British. And yet they don't talk about this. It's because it doesn't suit their trade deals. So it simply comes down to trade. Like we'll sell ourselves the same as us selling arms to many states or countries who are not democratic, and they're bombing the crap out of countries in the Middle East like Yemen and all that. And we'll say, no, we want democracy, but then we'll send weapons to undemocratic nations and regimes. And that's okay because it's a lot of money. So it all comes down to trade, unfortunately. We keep their mouth shut, which isn't really what the British are known for. So yeah, it is disgraceful.
I suppose that's the thing. It's really interesting, Ravi, because for you, I think there's a lot of misconceptions that people may have had out there about yourself. But from here, at least, I think what's very clear for me is the fact that it's a fight of equality for everybody, for every human being out there, to say what is rightfully ours. We all realize that being a human being is in a fragility in itself. We're only here for a set amount of years, but whilst we're here, at least we should all benefit equally alongside that. You're not anti-business in any sense, but you are saying, as a government, if you are going to be a social custodian to provide a better place for every single human being under your care and supervision, then it has to go beyond talk.
Yeah, of course. It makes you wonder where we're heading towards as people who turn blind eyes. I mean, it wasn't long ago when that guy was murdered in the Saudi embassy, Mr. Khashoggi, I think his name was. I can't remember. He was basically brutally murdered, cut to pieces, and the whole world said, we'll never, accept this. They have to bring to justice. 2 weeks ago, the G8 were holding a summit with the Saudis, and Saudis were leading it. So, we're a world that's very contradictory. We forget things easily. as I said, money talks. So it's the same with the Yezidi women. If the Yezidi women had been European or American or whatever, kidnapped by 4,000 or 5,000 by ISIS, there'll be World War III or World War X. They would have gone in and rescued them, because the Yazidis are backward community, economically backward community. They haven't got much to offer, oil or whatever. Nobody really gave a damn. So it's unfortunately, it comes down to money. Everything like this comes down to money, and we don't have any leaders with backbone to go look over that. My message to people of India is like, if somebody's challenging for justice or to build a better world, doesn't mean that they're here to destroy any culture or a country. I just want to make that point where when in 1984 thousands of Sikhs were murdered, that means there were thousands of murderers. So if 10,000 Sikhs were murdered, there must be at least 10 to 20,000 murderers. And if only 20 have stood trial, where's the other 19,980? They lived, they've gone back in the communities, and they've probably done more damage in the community, because those were the murderers that should have stood trial. And imagine in New Delhi, where thousands of Sikhs were killed, there's thousands of murderers living amongst the people and who actually got blood on their hands. And when we say for justice, we get labeled terrorists or whatever, ISA funded. But what about those thousands of murderers who for 35, 36 years have melted into the communities and got away with murder? So when you challenge me saying, don't talk about 84, what about those murderers? So we need to think, we should all build a better society. Nobody should be begging for justice. Justice should be second nature for anybody, regardless of their race, faith, and religion. Once that starts happening in India, everything will start healing itself.
Because if I read it correctly, what you're saying is that with the impact of 1984, it wasn't the brutality of the murders of the Sikhs. Those Sikhs were Indian citizens. They were citizens of a nation that's supposed to be protected by the nation. The fact that the nation turned its back against that in terms of the fight for justice shows that it turned its back on India, or this notion of Indianness that you want to represent. They're saying it is about equality, it is about peace, it is about protecting every echelon of society. Because that's exactly what you're saying, isn't it? And
yeah, so, I mean, they were tax-paying normal people like you and me were dragged in the street and murdered. They were Indian, but we don't want to see that.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. What was the impact that it had on you? Where were you during that time in 1984?
Oh, I was in the UK. I was 14 and a half at the time.
What impact did it have on you? Because you were born in Punjab, you were born in these areas.
I grew up in Punjab. So it makes you wonder when people say to you, there's no justice. We're not born with this ideology. There's no justice. We see it. Our whole family's been affected indirectly, directly. So you've seen it firsthand, and it's always come down to justice. Can we have justice? 36 years, we haven't seen justice. Only one person being jailed, the other two still free, the main actor, people, instigators of 84 genocide. That's like rubbing salt into our wounds.
Yeah.
And they always together. Now it was Congress, now it was BJP, now it was it means nothing to us. They were all politicians and they belong to India. And they've been protected by the Indian system. Until the Indian system is challenged on justice, we won't see killers brought to justice, which again comes down to the same vicious circle.
It's refreshing, isn't it? As a community, as people, global Indians, the movement that we're creating that goes regardless of national identities, regardless of any forms of ism, that we can actually sit back and create a safe mooring ground for these remarkable conversations. And that's thanks to you. So look, what I like to do is say this. If you like the work that we do, if you like what we're about, it's easy to support, share and comment on your area that you listen to this on. Because with your help and your shares, we get to build a living encyclopedia of people just like us. I hope you enjoy this session and take care for now.